to bring a word to you today. As I was studying for this, I realized I've never talked about this topic before from the pulpit. And so I just began to pray to the Lord that He would give me something special for you all here at Axess Church. And my prayer today is that the Lord would give you something that is helpful and useful for your walk with God. And we're going to talk today about rest. How many of you want more rest? Yeah. If you're not raising your hand, I know you're raising your hand internally, but you may not have the strength to actually lift your hands up. We all want more rest. And so, like I said, my prayer today is that the Lord is going to give you some insight and some revelation about rest is from a kingdom perspective. And if you'll stick with me today, I trust that you'll receive that from the Lord. When Keela and I were engaged, we weren't married yet, we had already purchased our condo. We have a condo. We love the condo that we live in. And we had purchased it a few months before we actually got married. And this gave me some time. Now, I'm not very handy, but it gave me some time to go in there and do some painting. Now, the painting's all messed up, but I did the best I could. And, that's why we gave ourselves some wiggle room. And one of my other jobs on top of painting was building some of the furniture as it arrived, because there was some stuff that we bought and some things that were wedding gifts that were starting to come in. And so as they would come in, I would build them. And one of the first things that came in was our dining room table. So I built that, and then our bed frame and our bed came in. And so I was excited. I got the bed frame into the bedroom. Now, it was just me. I had nobody to help me. And if any of you have built furniture by yourself before, you're using your leg to hold part of it in and get the pressure and, So that's what I'm doing. I'm building this bed frame. It's taking me time. I don't know why, but I didn't want to turn on the AC. I thought it was going to cost $1,000 to cool down our house for some reason. So I was like, I'm not turning the AC on. So it's hot in there, and I'm sweating. I get the bed frame finally built, and then I have to get the mattress on it. Now, if any of you have bought a new mattress, you'll know the way they do this now is they compress it down. It's like the size of a credit card. I don't know how they do this. They wrap it and compress it down. But then when you break that seal, that thing blows up like an airplane, right? And so it got super big, and I don't know why I did this. I did it inside the closet because that's where I had it. So now I'm trying to drag the mattress out of the closet. I get it out of the closet. I finally get it onto the bed frame, and I'm looking at it, and I said, I'm going to test it out. No sheets, no pillows, just a brand new mattress on a bed frame, and I laid down on it, and I fell asleep. I fell asleep on that mattress. Let me tell you something. Rest is hard work. Rest is hard work because you have to put in the work beforehand in order to get the rest that you want. And if there's one thing that I wish people would get in the body of Christ is that the rest that you want requires work to get it. And we're taught that rest is something that's easy to get into. But rest is actually hard work. The world craves rest. The world craves rest, but they don't know how to work for it. That's the issue. They want it, but they don't know how to work for it. They've never been taught how to work for it because you can only get it through the kingdom standard. You can only get it through the kingdom way. This is the shift in mindset that needs to happen. Rest is seen as an exit from something, but rest is actually an entrance into something. I'm gonna build this out for you a little more if that doesn't click yet. But rest is not an exit, it's an entrance. And the world views rest as an exit. And as long as you view rest as an exit for something, then you're never going to actually experience true rest. Let me give you an example of this. You have a long day at work. So you get home, you take your jacket off, you change into your comfy clothes. I love doing that, by the way. Put on some sweatpants, sweatshirt, and then you sit on the couch, you throw the TV on, put your favorite TV show on, get some snacks. what are we thinking in our minds when this happens? What we're thinking is, I've exited from my stressful job. I've left the stress of the day, and now I can have rest because I've left that behind, right? That's the exit mindset to get to rest. But let me provoke something. Have you ever thought about why entertainment starts with the word enter before it? Stick with me here. Because rest is not an exit, it's actually an entrance. And if you don't understand this, then you're never going to understand what you're actually entering into and if it's actually genuine rest or not. The etymology behind entertainment, do you know what it actually means? To occupy the mind. Entertainment is to occupy the mind. So here's the delusion. You think that you've entered rest because you've exited something else. But you don't realize that what you've entered is not actually a restful activity. Because it's not about what you exit, it's about what you enter. And I promise you, if this still doesn't make sense, it's okay, it'll come together. Let me give you a warning about rest. Anytime getting into rest feels too easy, it's probably not genuine rest. Anytime it comes to you way too easily, it's probably not genuine rest. Let me give you an example of this. A lot of people will say they have a hard time sleeping at night. And so what they do is they drink a whole bottle of wine beforehand. And that helps them sleep at night. Or they take sleeping pills, or they take something to get them into rest. Why? Because they think this is how I'm going to get genuine rest. But if you look at the science behind, especially alcohol, into rest, it actually messes up your entire sleep cycle. Did you know that? It disrupts your REM cycle. It disrupts the restoration process of your body. It leads to more frequent awakenings throughout the night. And ultimately, it leads to you feeling unrest even after a full night's sleep. So there's this delusion that I can get rest through these other means, but those means are easy. That's easy rest. And anytime rest is easy to you, it's probably not actual rest. So the world has perfected the exit, but I'm going to teach you how to perfect the entrance today. We see this with Israel. If you know the story, are you guys still with me today? Okay. If you know the story of Israel, you'll know that they were put into bondage by the Egyptians. And when they were in bondage to the Egyptians, God raised up a man named Moses, and he told Moses, I want you to go and tell Pharaoh to let my people go. After some stubbornness, Moses finally does it. And after Pharaoh's stubbornness, the Israelites finally get free. They've left Egypt. They've exited. Can we all agree on that? They've exited. God consistently told them that he was taking them somewhere called the Promised Land. When they left Egypt, were they immediately in the Promised Land? No. They had to go through the wilderness to get to the Promised Land. And God consistently told them, one day you will, catch it, enter the Promised Land. But they had not entered yet. They were in the wilderness. And in the wilderness, they did something called wandering. Come on, he caught it. They wandered in the wilderness before they entered into the Promised Land. A lot of people exit, but they never enter. They exit and they wander, and they think the wandering is rest, but the wandering is not the rest. The wandering is what you have to go through to get to the rest, because you don't actually get to rest until you enter. And what most people call rest is actually wandering. Let me give you an example of that. You binge scroll through social media for 3 hours. Is that real rest? No, that's wandering. You've never entered into real rest. It feels like you're doing something. It feels like you're resting from something, but you're not actually entering into true rest. That's just wandering. Busy work. You're doing a lot of nothing. It feels like you're making progress into something, but you're just wandering. You're not actually entering into rest. We've talked about this one already, self-medicating. Or how about this one, retail therapy, right? I saw a funny meme. It was a wife told her husband, therapy cost me $156 today. $150 at Target and $6 at Starbucks. That was my therapy. Because that's retail therapy. It feels like rest, but it's not actual rest. It's just wandering. Are you guys catching what I'm putting down here? Let's look at the text. If you want to turn in your Bibles to Hebrews chapter 4, I want to show you what the Word has to say about this. This is not just my opinion. This is coming from the Word of God. There was a group of Jewish Christians, and they followed Christ, but they were facing severe persecution because of their decision to follow Christ. And in this persecution, they became fearful and they became uncertain of God's faithfulness. They wondered, will God actually see us through the persecution that we are facing? And it got so bad that many of them were actually considering exiting the faith. They were considering revoking their commitment to Christ because they knew that if they did that, then the persecution would stop. And so the text of Hebrews that we have is written to these people. And it actually isn't a letter. I know it feels like a letter because you're reading it, but it was actually a sermon manuscript that was meant to be preached to these people. And whoever wrote this, we don't know who it was, but whoever wrote this text and this sermon, they were making a desperate plea to these people. Do not leave the faith. Do not go back on your decision to follow Christ. This person loved them and cared for them deeply. And they knew they were tempted to let go of Christ. So these people, what they had in their mind was an exit. But the writer of Hebrews had something else in mind. It was an entrance. Let's look at verse 1 in chapter 4. Therefore, since the promise of entering his rest still stands, let us be careful that none of you be found to have fallen short of it. Let's break this down. The first thing I want you to notice is, yes, the word entering, but it's the word that comes after that. It's not just entering rest, it's entering his rest. Say that with me. Say, his rest. We're entering not just any rest, we're entering his rest. And the entire biblical framework around rest is all based on God's rest. Where do we get this? We get it going all the way back to the beginning. All the way back to the book of Genesis. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth and everything in it. This was days 1 through 6. If you don't know the 7 days of creation, I encourage you to go and study it. Days 1 through 6, God made everything in creation, including us, mankind. Every single human on this planet, those living, those who will live, those who have lived, have entered into days 1 through 6. I'm going to give you a different perspective on creation for a moment. Every human has entered into days 1 through 6 because everybody has entered into God's creation. Even the atheist can look at a beautiful sunset and recognize the beauty of what they're seeing. Why? Because we can all see the beauty of God's creation. We're all in God's creation. You know, if you go on IMDb, if you don't know what that is, I don't have time to explain it, but it's all about movies and stuff. If you go on there, The most well-performing TV series of all time is Planet Earth. Have you ever seen Planet Earth before? It's a beautifully done documentary about creation, the animals, and everything in creation. I think there's a reason why it's number one, because there's something within us that's drawn towards the beauty of creation, because it's God's creation, and He made it for us. So we've all experienced the beauty of God's creation. Let's continue on. Genesis chapter 2, verses 2 through 3. Let's look at day 7. Thus the heavens and the earth were completed in all their vast array. By the seventh day, God had finished the work He had been doing. So on the seventh day, He rested from all His work. Then God blessed the seventh day and made it holy, because on it He rested from all the work of creating all that He had done. Let me blow your minds for a second. A lot of the bad theology that we have about rest comes from a misunderstanding about what it meant when it says that God rested. God was not physically tired. I'm sorry if this is, bursting your faith bubble here. God was not physically tired. He was not panting on the sixth day. He wasn't saying, give me a seat. Come, I got to sit down somewhere. I'm getting dizzy here, and I need Gatorade, electrolytes. God was not physically tired. So what does it mean that He rested? I want you to picture that bed frame for a second. After the work was complete, I laid down on the bed because I got to enjoy what I created. I got to enjoy what I put into order, what I put into place. Because rest is the result of hard work. Rest is the result of something. And so when God got creation all in order, how He wanted it to be in order, because the way He found it, it was formless and void. There was nothing to it. There was no rhyme or reason, but God came and gave a rhyme and a reason. He put things into order, and then what did He do? He rested because He enjoyed His creation. He enjoyed His creation. God was not tired. God was triumphant. He wasn't tired. He was triumphant. So let me redefine rest for you for a moment. Rest is freely enjoying God's creation and the Creator. That's what true rest is enjoying God's creation and enjoying Him as the Creator. Remember, days 1 through 6, every human enters days 1 through 6. Because every human, whether they want to admit it or not, they enjoy God's creation. You're enjoying the oxygen that you're breathing right now. You're enjoying the sunshine. You're enjoying everything about creation. But not everyone enters into day 7. Day 7 is a different kind of entering in. It's God's rest. And it's the rest that says, I'm enjoying days 1 through 6, but I'm also enjoying the Creator. That's day 7. Day 7 is being loved by God and loving God. Day 7 is perfect communion with your Creator. Day 7 is the first love. It's complete delight in who God is and what He's done. Day 7 is going to bed at night knowing that you are loved by your Father. It's going to bed at night knowing that God's unfailing love will never let you down. That is the rest. That's God's rest. And He says, enter into God's rest. But then the story takes a turn. Sin enters the world. And when sin entered the world, pain and brokenness and sickness and hostility and idolatry and division all came in to the created order. And when Satan did this, I believe this is the anti-creation. Because once Satan was able to deceive Adam and Eve, Satan, I believe he sat back and he rested and he saw that it was very good. He looked at the damage he caused and he said, this is my creation. This is anti-creation. So now there's a second creation competing with the first creation. It's the creation of corruption. It's the corrupted order of what God set into place. I think another name for that is anti-rest. It's anti-rest. It competes with the rest of God. It tries to siphon off the rest of our Creator. Look at Hebrews chapter 4, verses 9 through 10. Is everyone still with me? I'm trying to take you on a journey here to understand how we ended up where we are and how we can move forward through it. Remember, this writer, this pastor, he's trying to get them to understand your eyes are on the exit, but I want to focus you on the entrance. Verses 9 through 10. There remains then a Sabbath rest for the people of God. For anyone who enters God's rest also rests from their works, just as God did from his. In this verse, the word works is mentioned twice. There is God's work and there is our work. It says that God rested from his work, and in the same way, we rest from our work. Now, these two works are not the same thing. They actually have different meanings. There's God's work and our work. God's work is the work that he did as creator. So he rested from putting things into order because it was already done. There was nothing left to do. So he wasn't tired, he was triumphant. That was the work that he rested from. Now, when it says that we rest from our work, that actually means we rested from toils and struggles. Now, the reason why that's profound is if you go back to Genesis chapter 2 and 3, after sin entered the world, what happened? All of a sudden, things were not like they were supposed to be. God says now women are going to experience pain in childbirth. And what did he say was going to happen with the men? He said when they work the soil, they're going to toil and struggle. Come on, this is going somewhere. They're going to toil and struggle. So what was once a blessing now became difficult because sin entered into the world. Because sin corrupted what God created. So does this mean that we can never experience rest now because sin's entered the world? Will we have to wait till God creates all things new again to experience rest until he kicks sin out once and for all? Look at verse 16 with me. Let us then approach God's throne of grace with confidence so that we may receive mercy and find grace to help us in our time of need. I found a really cool insight in one of the commentaries that I was studying for this. And the commentator pointed out about the book of Hebrews that the writer uses two different descriptions for God's rest. He uses the city as a whole, the new creation, God's rest, and then he also uses throne room and the temple verbiage as well. And he said every time the writer talks about the new creation, the heavenly city, he's referring to the end time rest that we will all experience because God will make all things new. And you're gonna experience rest whether you like it or not because God's gonna get rid of all sin. He's gonna wipe all tears from our eyes. All brokenness, all decay will be gone. All division, all corruption will be dealt with at the end time. But he says when he's speaking of the right now rest, he speaks of the throne room, of the most holy place. Because that's the rest that we have right now. So many times we think, oh, well, God will just someday give us rest. It'll happen someday when God waves his wand and makes all things new. No, there's rest for you right now. There's rest to be had right now. And that's why the writer of Hebrews said, let us then now approach God's throne of grace with confidence so that we may receive mercy and find grace to help us in our time of need. Because there is a right now rest for the people of God. So how do we get it? How do we get it? You have to perfect the entrance. You have to perfect the entrance. Will you stand to your feet with me? This entrance that I'm referring to, this is the work that is required. This is the work that's required to experience rest right now. Because remember, rest is hard work. Rest is hard work. There's something that precedes it in order to enter genuine rest. And that work is going to the throne. It's going to the throne. I know some of you may be thinking, well, that's not work. Well, if it's not work, then why do we all struggle to do it? If it's not work, then why aren't all of us in perfect rest all the time? Because it is work. It's the work of discipline. It's the work of admitting, catch this, that you need help. Because it says you go to the throne to find help. The only time you try to find help is because you have the humility to admit that you need it in the first place. That's the work. The work is carving out the time to say, I know my life is busy, but I'm going to make time in my schedule to climb the flight up to the throne room. I'm going to make time to talk to the Creator who knows me and loves me and cares for me. It's not just about the exit. It's about the entrance. What are you entering into? Because what you enter into determines the rest that you get. Something that's really cool about God's rest is that you're entering into something that's already been set in place for you. I labored to build that bed frame, but Keela gets to enjoy it every night. She didn't lift a finger. She just gets to enter into my labor. She gets to enter into my work, and she gets to enjoy it. And the same is true for you and I. That's why it says you're not entering into your own rest, because you cannot produce rest on your own. You have to enter into God's rest because you're entering into what He has already done for you. That's why it's called the finished work of the cross, because you're not adding a single thing to what Jesus has done. You are entering in to what He's already done for you. But it requires you to take the step of faith to enter in. That's the part that God cannot do for you. He cannot force you into rest. He cannot push you into the throne room. That would be manipulation. That would be coercion, and it wouldn't be genuine. But instead, He opens up the door and says, my son, my daughter, the invitation is here. Come before my throne. Perfect the entrance and find the grace and the help that you need. And when you get inside that throne room, you're going to find a faithful high priest. A faithful high priest who has experienced all the struggles that you are experiencing right now. You're going to find a faithful high priest who knows all the weaknesses that you are experiencing in your life right now. And that's why that high priest is able to give you the grace and the help that you need. Because He's walked that path already. He's already secured what you need. You just have to do one thing. You have to do the work of entering in. You have to do the work of entering in. So this week, this is what I want you to do. I want you to make it a habit of entering into God's rest each day. Use this verse right here. This is your promise. The promise is that you can enter with boldness and with confidence. You don't have to be ashamed. You belong at the throne. So become familiar. This is the last thing I'm going to say. There's a level of familiarity that you have with someone, and it's proven by if you can open their fridge in their own home. It's the mark. If you can do that, you know that they invite you into their home, that you are welcome in their home, that you belong in their home because you can open up the fridge whenever you want. That's the kind of comfort God wants you to have in His presence, where it doesn't feel weird doing it. It doesn't feel out of place. God says, come before me with confidence because you belong.